Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Jenny Zell, and I'll be the moderator of today's webinar. But before we start, I do have some housekeeping items that I'd like to share with you all. This webinar will be recorded, so we will be sure to send out after. We'll also have a Q&A session at the end with our speakers, so if you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to add them to the chat box as we go along. Today's speakers are Stefan Schinkel, Chief Sales Officer, and Will Ezel, Co-founder and Chief Technology Officer for dotCMS. And with that, I'd like to pass over to you, Stefan.
Thanks, Jenny, and welcome everyone. We're excited to share our spring product updates, and we want to support and accelerate your digital ambition, whether you are optimizing or transforming your business, given the current events. I think it's fair to state that the heat is on, and that I'm not referencing the song recorded by Glenn Frey, but it's really the new norm where there's a distributed workforce where there's online-only collaboration within teams, but also across departments. But it also requires a higher individual self-sufficiency. In addition, the output per capita will be higher and requested faster in order to survive your competition, right? And at the same time, there is no compromise with respect to flexibility, interoperability, scalability, security, and innovation, right? So again, it's fair to say that the heat is on. And from a dotCMS perspective, this means that we want to focus on three key areas in our product. First of all, there's the no-code paradigm, right? We want to make non-technical CMS users as self-sufficient as possible in their day-to-day operation. Conversely, we want to offload the IT teams so they can really focus on innovation, right? Really killing two birds with one stone. Secondly, there's product experience, right? So we really want to enhance the overall product experience for individual usage of the product, but also enhance the collaboration within teams, and particularly distributed teams, and create enterprise and team agility, right? Faster time to value, faster time to market. And then lastly, interoperability. We want to make it easier to build platforms with adjacent legacy or cutting-edge technology as quickly and secure as possible. With that, I would like to hand over to Will, who's going to take you through our product updates. Will, take it away.
Thank you, Stefan. And thank you all for joining us for dotCMS 2020 Spring Update. Slide deck is appropriately named Exciting Times. We certainly do live in exciting times, and I hope everyone's well and safe. We're here to talk about dotCMS, what we're working on in the product, what's coming from the short term, what's coming from the medium term, and also what we're looking at working on in a longer term vision. Short term, I would say, is our range there is the next 3 to 4 months. Medium term is within the year, and our longer term vision is outside of a year, what we're going to be delivering in 2021. To begin with, the short term, the big news there is that we're putting the final touches on dotCMS 5.3. dotCMS 5.3 is a big release from a structural standpoint, in the sense that one of the main things that we're going to be doing in it is really beginning to break down the monolith that is dotCMS. And we're going to do that by default shipping with a fully externalized Elasticsearch. dotCMS has traditionally run Elasticsearch in what's called embedded mode. The embedded Elasticsearch has served us well. It's very performant, but again and again we're asked, okay, well, we are already running a large Elasticsearch cluster in-house. Can we just connect to it? And we've always had to say, no, you got to run our embedded Elasticsearch. Well, this really breaks that down, and we begin to treat Elasticsearch like a database that we connect to remotely. Out of the box, we're going to be shipping with Amazon's open distro of Elasticsearch. It's a little more secure than Elastic's, free product or open source product, and it also comes with all the tooling, Kibana, all of the pieces that you'd expect from to manage your Elasticsearch. Another thing we did, and this was important because when we moved from embedded Elasticsearch to using the REST-enabled Elasticsearch, is the fact that Elasticsearch queries or dotCMS is now caching the results of those Elasticsearch queries. This was really important for performance, and we've seen some really strong performance numbers using that cache. And that cache is invalidated whenever new content's added to the repo, so it shouldn't have any effect in terms of when content appears in different queries, but that was a really important component. And as I was mentioning, you can use, when provisioning for dotCMS, you can use managed Elasticsearch services. We've tested it against the Elastic Service. We've also tested it against the AWS Elastic Service. It responds fine to both of those. And we've kept up with the version updates. I think we're maybe one version behind the Elasticsearch version 7 something. It's been running very well and with no modification against the late 6 series to the more modern 7 series of Elasticsearch. And finally, out of the box, dotCMS will, based on its cluster name, will automatically create indexes and the search pieces that it needs. But it allows you to, if you have multiple dotCMS infrastructures, you can use one large Elasticsearch cluster, and they're not going to conflict. You're not going to be able to see the indexes of the other clusters, nor can you read or write. From a structural standpoint, it moves dotCMS away from the, one-click download and, start it up, and it all is sort of this embedded infrastructure. It moves us more towards we're a larger scale system. We're expecting there to be pieces in place like Elasticsearch that we can connect to. All of our Docker compose files and the example reference implementations have been updated to support this, and it's a very important piece for us moving forward. So the next thing that I want to talk about, and I'll show this out of the box, and this is a really, really nice to have feature in dotCMS, we've worked very hard to make managing content more seamless. And this is where we're going as a product. I think this is a very important product direction for us, which is to improve the editor's experience within the system itself. And so what we've done is enabled card view for the content search listings. Now, this is the first blush at it. We're going to be layering this on into different places within the system. It's actually built as a web component, if that's interesting. But the content card view, allows you to switch between a visual, be able to do visual searches across different content types. It also gives you the ability, and this is huge, to drag and drop content right into the dotCMS system. So we're shipping with a new content type called .assets, which is just exactly like the generic piece of content, except it has an asset associated with it. You can drag and drop upload this, and all of the metadata is stored and indexed and made searchable, basically giving you the idea and allowing you to begin to build these large-scale asset repositories. So let me show you what that looks like from a back-end perspective. So here I am in the back end of dotCMS, right? And you can see here that looks familiar. But what we've done is we've enabled the idea that you can switch here the view for your content and your content search screen. So this is using under the covers. For those who are interested, it's a custom web component. It could be reused in other projects. But as you browse, and I'm just in the default starter site, but you can see here just by looking, it makes finding and managing content, managing blogs, for example, so much more elegant. The idea to be able to see visually which blogs that you're managing, right? And you can do everything you can do from the content list screen, push these through workflow, reset, archive, push publish, all of that can happen right from this card view. Now let me share the another cool feature is that, so what we've also done here is we have enabled drag and drop support. So, for example, we can go ahead and select these 8 assets here and drop them into our dotCMS installation. And you can see here they're instantly uploaded. Now, this is a work in progress. We're working on the progress bars and the notifications that's happened. But you can see here I uploaded all different kinds of assets, and dotCMS just took them and created, and this is what I was referring to, created this new asset type called a dot asset, which is basically just an asset that can be referenced and used throughout the system again and again. It doesn't have a real URL. Unlike the files in dotCMS, it doesn't have a real URL. You're going to have to refer to it via the short URL or the DA convention URL, but that gives you access to the asset. You can edit the asset in line. Really, it acts like any given asset in the system. So it enables us to begin to, now we can layer drag and drop capabilities of these images, these assets, onto all different components within the system. So this is just a start, but you're going to see much more of this as we move forward and begin to embed this idea of these dot assets, these reusable files into our paradigm here, right? And the idea, I think, is to automatically, when a new dot asset's added to the system, to automatically, and it's an image, we can automatically get it tagged. We can get the metadata tagging on it, or if it's a file, all of the content is automatically made searchable by Elasticsearch. So that's the idea of dot assets, and it's really just a new powerful paradigm. The idea of the card view and the ability to just drag and drop assets right into dotCMS is a really neat new feature in 5.3. Next, I want to move on and talk about our hybrid capabilities. And for those of you who have been with us for a bit, dotCMS has an SPA editor, or edit mode anywhere we call it, where you can actually manage an entire page and layout and drag and drop and add new content to pages, manage the layouts, the columns, the headers, all of anything with regard to a page, and then render that in an SPA. What we've done now is we're taking that to the next level, and we've using the latest version of Next.js, we're basically allowing you to manage your SPA and then render that as a static site or asset that can be completely static, depending on how you develop it, or it can be a mixture of static and active, meaning like for example, the above the fold content can be static for high performance, but the below the fold content will be actually driven on the client side, right? And you can see we have, just as a proof of concept, this is all being done with the dotCMS SPA. Let me show you the dotCMS SPA. If you're interested to see how this works, you can see here the dotCMS single page app. You can check this out and get moving with it. And you can see here we've published this, actually, our single page app, which is directly hooked up into our starter site. We're publishing that on Netlify, right? So you can see here the transitions, if I just click back and forth, are almost instantaneous. And you can also see we're even doing things like the form builder is actually being rendered, because this is actually being delivered as an active call and going and retrieving the form layout, which can then be submitted back into dotCMS. So this is just an example of what can be done. These images here are being served off of I believe our demo site, but if you wanted to put them on a CDN, and have this site automatically generate itself whenever a new git commit is done to your, to your React single-page app. All of that's available to you now with the new SPA. And those are the main highlights of what's coming in 5.3. 5.3 is we're expecting it within the next month or two, and we're putting the finishing touches on some of the different drag and drop pieces and their integration with the different components of dotCMS. But we're real excited about it. It's going to be a very, very nice upgrade, and just going to continue to push dotCMS forward and make us that much more easy to engage with and use as a content repository. Next, let me talk a little bit about midterm. Midterms within the year. These are developments that we're actually currently working on. They're in the pipeline and in development, and I'll demonstrate some of the good work that's happening there. So the first thing I want to show is dotCMS is building an app center. As the slide says, we should play well with others, and there we are on the slide playing very well with all the kids. But what the app center will allow, the apps and integrations will allow you to do is to build out and configure integrations with other, net-friendly systems out there. It's all configurable, and each of the apps and integrations are configurable via YAML files. So you can define a new integration within a YAML file, potentially add some different integration points via an OSGI plugin, and all of the information for the apps integration is all stored in an encrypted file in the dotCMS file system. So that can, future forward can be integrated with a secrets manager, Vault, or Amazon Secrets manager. So that's the plan for that future forward. But let me just share with you the vision and the idea of what that looks like from the UI perspective. So you can see I come here and come to this apps tool, and you can see here now these integrations are not done yet. These are just examples here for this webinar, but this is the examples of things that we're thinking about building into this apps tool. So for example, dotCMS, you can connect dotCMS to translation companies, right? Out of the box, we have a translation workflow. This is a place where you could come in and actually configure that translation workflow. And the beauty of it is you can configure it for the whole system, or you can configure it host by host. So if you have multiple sites, they have different Active Directory logins, for example. You can configure each of those different sites separately. And so this is an extension point in dotCMS that we're going to be building upon and delivering these apps and integrations just on a rolling basis. So I think in the first blush of the apps portlet, we're targeting 2 or 3 applications to build in here. One would be perhaps a SAML plugin that's now a plugin. Build that into the core and let that be configured within this application. Google Translate's low-hanging fruit, as is Amazon Recognition, which will automatically tag and categorize your content, your images, what have you. But you can see here, these different apps this is really where we're moving as a company to really interconnect dotCMS with all of the web ecosystem that's out there and allow dotCMS much richer integrations with those systems. Another component we're hard at work at is the ability to really finely control what happens when you hit push publish in dotCMS. Right now, there's 2 modes of operation for push publishing. Either you do a force push, which will push everything all the way down to even potentially your sites or hosts and the information contained in them. Those sites or hosts might be unique in different environments, and those are some things that you maybe never want to push, except maybe only the first time that you set up your infrastructure. So you either push this huge dependency tree with a force push, or tries to intelligently see what has been pushed to the other environment and will build the bundle of objects that have been changed since. We'll do basically a delta of what's changed since your previous push. Well, this is This has worked okay. It's had challenges. Lots of times things get pushed that you don't want to push. Content types get dragged along. Potentially there's changes to content types that shouldn't be pushed. Relationships and, all different types of workflows and workflow steps can get pushed as well. All of those different pieces get pushed as dependencies. And so what push publishing filters allows you to do is to, using configuration, and again, YAML configuration files to say, okay, I only want, when I click push publish to my production environment, the only thing I want to push are news stories, or the only thing I want to push to my new environment are new pages. I don't want to push workflows. I don't want to push users. I don't want to push hosts. Those are already set up in this new environment. All I want to do is just push this small subset of content or different objects within the system. When you're doing an implementation in dotCMS, I think the vision is that you can define what the push publishing filters are for a majority of content contributors who are working with it in the system. You can say only grant them permissions to push web type content, not push new content types, not push new hosts or new sites. Those maybe only administrators can do those, because you don't want that stuff to get dragged across as dependencies. And so that ability to control what's counted as a dependency is a really important feature here for push publishing, and will ultimately make push publishing that much more reliable in the sense that you do have control and vision into what's actually getting pushed across to the different environments. So if I have a push publishing environment set up to, let's say, prod1.dotcms.com, and I come to our content search screen, and let's say I want to push publish these assets here, I can pull down, pull down push publish, and you can see here now the push publish selector here is showing me a list of what filter I want to apply to this push. Okay, so this list again is permission based, so your content editors can only have a certain option there, or two options. But you can see here, send everything, send content without dependencies, send web content, which would be folders, content rules, would not send roles or workflows or content types or hosts. Send everything respecting push publish history, that's actually the default right now. And then there's, send everything, which is basically a force push. So these rules and these filters are defined in YAML files, and let me show you what they look like. This is an example of sending web content only. So for example, you can set in the YAML file whether it's the default, you can set the roles that are going to be able to access this particular filter. You can have an exclude query, so this can be used to exclude any content all the time. You can exclude certain classes from the push. So if I never want to push, my workflow, you can exclude that. I never want to push my languages, you can exclude that. Whether I should or should not pull dependencies, and then it's exclude dependencies as well, right? So potentially what I want to exclude is different than what I want to exclude when I'm doing the dependency lookup, whether or not that should be a force push, and whether or not relationships of content should be pushed. So it gives you can really ratchet down exactly what's going to be pushed. You can see here if I take a look at a shallow push, the idea of a shallow push is that it won't ever include dependencies. It's basically only going to push that object without any of the dependencies, and that gives you the ability from an administrative perspective to build bundles that are very, very specific to exactly what's been added into that bundle. So a next component that we're currently working on is the idea, this is really an interesting one, is the idea of a dotCMS command line interface. What we envision here is a command line client that can interact with the dotCMS installation and can do things like run upgrade tasks. So, if you want to automate an upgrade process or take your upgrade offline, dotCMS has always run the upgrade process as sort of in line. You pointed at an existing dotCMS database and you start dotCMS up. This is potentially a way to run those upgrade tasks and sort of normalize your data with dotCMS offline. To do things like to create a bundle and add content to it and download it to a local folder. To be able to take the content within that local folder and push it or put it to dotCMS and have dotCMS ingest that. So, for example, the ability to define to, download your content types, make your changes, download your content types as JSON with the command line tool, make your changes to the content type definitions, obviously check those into some version control, and then use the dotCMS command line to put those back into your dotCMS installation. It's really going to enable CI/CD pipelines in creative ways to be able to interact on a command line basis with your dotCMS installations to build backups of dotCMS or put new content into it or new content object types, containers, templates, what have you. This is another piece that's really in its beginning stages, but is a very important component for us, I think, moving forward, especially with the rise of CI/CD and command line tooling. Let me talk now and turn our attention to the longer-term vision for dotCMS. This is looking out beyond a year, 2021. Really is aspirational, but we are putting the pieces in place to beginning the discovery for these developments currently as we speak. The first one that I want to talk about is the continued build out of our GraphQL interfaces. So we have GraphQL available against the content store, but we also have a very important API, our page API, which is not implemented in GraphQL. It's a RESTful API that gives you pretty much everything you need to composite a page in a single page app and enables really edit mode anywhere, the ability to have a manageable and editable single page app. We're going to begin pushing these API calls to GraphQL. It's just a much more efficient protocol. It allows developers to get the exact pieces that they need. And I think it's an important, really the page API and even the navigation API, which delivers, how the navigation is defined. Those are important components for delivering, single page apps, and I think they're perfect candidates to be moved to GraphQL. Another piece that we also are going to be moving to GraphQL is the idea of delivering that content rendered. So this is, again, going back to the hybrid capability and sort of a native hybrid system. You can render dotCMS, you can create widgets that can be rendered either server-side or the sort of the metadata for the widget can be delivered to your single-page app to render it on the JavaScript or client side. A lot of times people want both capabilities and are looking to have rendered pages and containers. Maybe those are rendered even as Markdown. Maybe the Markdown rendering happens within dotCMS and then is delivered via GraphQL to your single-page app. And finally, moving to using GraphQL and deeply embedding that into our demonstration single-page app. Right now, the single-page app is using our REST API interface, but I think moving forward, we're going to begin exploring, embedding Apollo.js and using that to interact much more with the content repository within dotCMS. Also in the pipeline is deeper integration with Redis. We have, with dotCMS, we have a number of different caching strategies and what we call cache providers. We ship, out of the box with the Hazelcast cache provider. We also have customers that we have two different Redis cache providers. Moving forward, I think we're going to begin to ship by default, expecting a Redis cache provider in order to wire up a cluster. Redis is just it's an internet standard, and it provides a really robust set of features, even outside of just as an object cache. It allows us to do real-time pub sub, and also even real-time stream processing, sort of like a Kafka-lite, for those of you who are familiar with Kafka, and allows us to engage and begin to spread out and use some of the different features there, even outside of just our cache infrastructure. So that's a component that's going to be coming down the pipe with dotCMS over the next year. And next up, and this is something that actually the dot asset and the drag and drop capabilities are really the start of, is an improved editor experience, moving towards enabling what's called a block-styled WYSIWYG. What a block-styled WYSIWYG is, it allows you to basically manage content in blocks, very, very much like with our containers, how you can drag and drop containers upwards or downwards. That's the same way that you can manage blocks within this WYSIWYG. It gives you very, very tight control over the output and can really enable some cool functionality within the editor itself. Things like adding certain people, real-time collaboration, aka like Google Doc collaboration, and even embedding content. The idea of stories, where you can have a long-form story and embed containers after the first embed a YouTube video after the first paragraph, and then an image library after the third paragraph, to begin to kind of build a really engaging type of experience. So this improved editor experience is a real important point, I think, for us moving forward, is to become the content and collaboration tool of record for large organizations. And with that concludes our presentation. This is what's cooking at dotCMS and in the dotCMS development world. Alongside of this comes myriads of other improvements, and things happening under the hood. Can be found in the documentation and change logs. And we're happy to take questions and answer any questions, even online or offline, that you all might have of the different capabilities that you've seen. So thank you all very much, and everyone have a great day.